Well, this seems about as good a way to really test out the new mic and everything as anything. If this works, you're going to see it. If it doesn't, you're not.
I think that if you care about someone and you got a little love in your heart, there ain't nothing you can't get through together. You know what I'm saying?
Everything about Ted Lasso is great.
What? He said the thing? I made that joke.
Yes.
I don't think they pace some things at the very end of the season absolutely perfectly, but generally, in theory, I do agree with that statement.
You did, dear viewer, and even if I've acted annoyed in the past about it, secretly I love it and you for it. It's a great joke, and it applies to about 6 movies I've done. But you didn't come to Cinema Wins to talk about movies, obviously. Today, you're here to talk TV, or listen TV. Huh, that verb doesn't work that way. And if you're a fan of my channel, it's probably no surprise that I love Ted Lasso. I mean, it's essentially the ethos of my channel in show form. Positivity, optimism, soccer, blonde ladies. But it's just so effing wholesome, like me, but not wholesome in a sanitized for the kids.
And good workout routines.
Kids way, or that weird ultra-violence is cool but boobs are bad way. Wholesome in a way that makes you feel okay about the world and also laugh at a good fart joke while admiring some Brits' workout routines and beautiful beards.
I knew that was gonna come.
Cinema Wins bread and butter, so it shouldn't be a shock
got beautiful beard wins.
to anyone that I think Ted Lasso is a perfect television show. Now, let me be clear, I am not saying that Ted Lasso is the perfect television show. That award goes to Patriot. No, I won't be taking any questions, but it is a perfect show. Its 3 seasons follow a classic 3-act structure, and like the OG Star Wars films, the second one was initially thought to be inferior and in many ways too dark, yet looking back at it, it's actually exactly what the story needed. Ted Lasso has everything you want: likable characters, unlikable characters, real stakes, real consequences, real relationships, betrayal, redemption, forgiveness, soccer, football from now on, lots of dirty jokes. It's great, and it's over. And while on one hand that makes me sad, on the other hand it's part of the reason it's perfect TV. So look, just in case you haven't watched it, I'll be spoiling some stuff here and there, even though it's not really a show that can be spoiled, but let me sell you on it with one tiny scene from the pilot.
With the girls and the champagne and everything, he looks like a good time.
That's my ex-husband.
Well, good times aren't always a good time. I've heard about all that. How are you holding up?
Yeah, hasn't been the easiest year.
The context is pretty explicit. It's a solid, albeit simple setup and punchline from Jason Sudeikis, your comedy, and then he immediately goes full 100% sincere and asks Rebecca how she's doing, your wholesomeness. It's so clear to Rebecca that he's being genuine.
Speaking of people, I really need to get better at memorizing this actress's name, because everyone does good, but I feel like more than anyone else, she steals the name. Yeah, sure. Name's Ted Lasso, but to me, she's the real main character. I said it.
Genuine while not trying to be intrusive, that she nearly tears up and responds honestly. That's the show right there. There's no one that Ted can't wear down and no one that his positivity doesn't rub off on. An actual, real-life nice guy. That's about 11 minutes into the pilot, and that's when I was hooked.
Get my man Nate here running the horn.
You're a godsend, Ted Lasso!
Of course, one of the arguments against the show is that Ted Lasso himself is in fact too perfect. Sports Jesus, if you will.
Metaphor.
He's a cishet white dude who somehow gets it, nails all his relationships, always knows what to say, teaches a team of professional football players how to play a brand of football they've never played before, while he himself has never even played the game, eventually landing second place in what is arguably the best league in the world. But I'd say that take is a misunderstanding of the show and the events therein, because Ted isn't perfect. It's very clear he's not perfect. Those who follow the Premier League and conceivably professional sports in general knew that from day one. He accepted a job coaching a...
And I've seen a lot of actors kind of talk about how, at the end of the day, I think even cinema therapy, they talk at the end of the day, he was a bad coach. His big strength at coaching, and the only reason he was able to be so successful is because he was able to get Nate and Coach Beard and Roy Kent. It's not that he was good at football in any way. He knew 2 things about it by the end. It's that he knows how to surround himself with good people. He can spot good talent even in things that he's not talented in.
Premier League team as a division.
And then why is he so likable and get it and everything? Because he works so hard to be that.
2 college American football coach. He even asks his best friend and right-hand man if accepting the job was crazy, and Beard says this.
Yeah, this is nuts.
That's all in the first episode. Now, plenty of things slip by in pilots because we're still getting comfy and learning the characters, figuring out the tone, etc. But that doesn't change the fact that from the jump, and for myriad reasons, Ted genuinely shouldn't have taken the job. And when Rebecca finally owns up and apologizes to him, he makes it clear that he took the job in response to his split from his wife. It's part of the reason he's so quick to forgive Rebecca. They're going through similar heartbreaks. And I mean, after his wife visits and it becomes clear they're splitting up, Nate asks Beard if Ted is all right, and Beard hilariously responds, "No." Gosh, Beard is the best.
Is Beard always a win?
Beard is always a win.
He's not, though. The one episode I definitely don't like is like his episode. The spoiler alert. He has an episode where he just kind of goes running around the city. And it's very weird and nothing really matters, and I kind of hate it. My brother even more so. I didn't like that episode. It's not bad. I can even understand why other people would like it. I don't. But like outside of that, like he's got a wonderful scene between him and Nate, and I think like the second to last episode, there's one scene I've seen that one so good. It gets Any Wins Back. Any Wins Back that one Beard episode lost to me. That episode gets back. That one scene gets back for me. I appreciate how there's Beard kind of has a silent arc going throughout the series of he talks more and more each season, which is so indicative of the character.
In other words, Ted is only perfect if you're not actually paying attention. And to expand on that forgiveness scene a little bit, I'm definitely not the first to say or think it, but that scene is such a huge expectation subversion. That storyline is prime drama for any other show. There's 3 episodes at least of comedy built right into Rebecca's betrayal and Ted.
No judgment if you're one of those people who needs to be perfect. I get that. I need that at times, so.
Trying to forgive her. But not only would that not be Ted, it wouldn't have worked for the show. Rebecca does the right thing, and Ted immediately turns it around and comforts her. And even more importantly, he doesn't hold it against her going forward. So, when Season 2 dropped, tons of people said the show had jumped the shark. And while Season 2 had a few hiccups in my opinion, it made perfect sense in the story. It is the very model of an Act 2. Expanded on certain characters and relationships, made stark choices that in the moment felt out of place, but the more you think about it, it makes sense.
My mom hated the spitting. I watched this with my family. My mom hated the spitting so much.
Nate, I'm talking about Nate there. But then after the bummer of a second season, the third season Ewok'd onto our screens and into our hearts, and all was well again.
Welcome to Citizen M,
Raw,
the hotel
done,
built
cut.
around you, dear mobile citizen.
Because the free editor I have, not really good at precise 10-second cutting.
Except
I don't
now
get enough views to justify it, and I'm not trying hard enough to get more views to justify it.
Ted Lasso wasn't greedy enough, but we have to go back to Season 1 to explore that. August 2020, the first summer of the pandemic, or panty, as some would learn to call it. Nobody really knew what to do. Existential dread began to permeate humanity. A lot of people were stuck at home, which meant lots of TV and movies needed to be consumed.
So, for an introvert like me, it was absolute paradise and it was wonderful. Put my career back a couple of years, which hurts, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't really feel that until I'd been back in my career for a couple of years.
Also doom scrolling Twitter. And without that, some shows may have never popped off like they did. You're welcome, Tiger King.
I'm never gonna financially recover from this.
But one of these shows that deserved the attention was Ted Lasso. And we loved how uplifting Ted Lasso felt. The very thing that everyone would complain about a year or two later. Suddenly our 1989 era was over and our Reputation era had come back. No more fun, only pain and cynicism. The way the world really is. None of this unrealistic forgiveness nonsense. So Season 3 ends up being super feel-good and according to some is now boring. It's not real enough, it's not grim enough. Tackles too many issues. Never mind that almost every issue that it addresses is a real issue in professional football. Racism, homophobia, team owners attempting to start a super league to make money. All you need to do is read about the recent...
Which, from what I understand, that the British Premier League basically already is a super league, so... If there's a difference between the British Premier League and a Super League, by all means correct me in the comments. But I don't know what that is.
Experience of Real Madrid player Vinicius Jr. playing against Valencia to know that racism is still very real in the sport. Never read the comments, but if a club posts something in support of pride, believe me when I say for many clubs, many of those comments are vile. And the Super League thing literally happened. Just instead of Rebecca saving the day, it was the fans who protested and had the league stopped.
Nice.
For now.
Good on
Those
them.
plot lines that many considered over the top were essentially the most realistic part of the show. Of course, realism was never the point of Ted Lasso. Anyone who knows anything about Premier League football knows that AFC Richmond's Nelson Road Stadium would have been burned to the ground if Rebecca actually hired someone with his job experience.
I mean, it's mental. They're gonna f***ing murder you.
Ted's good attitude aside, there's a good reason everyone thinks he's a dum-dum in the first couple episodes. He is. A lovable, optimistic dum-dum, but still a dum-dum. As the show progresses, Ted's optimism doesn't go away, it changes. He wants to win, he wants to succeed. He wants to live the best life he can. And to live the best life you can't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. He stops avoiding his problems with, as many have said, toxic positivity and starts addressing them. Ironically, even then, it's hard for him to crack his own jovial crust. The first time he tells the doc about his dad, he does so through a smile for as long as he can possibly hold. But the scene with his mother, affectionately known as the thank you FU scene, is a perfect example.
Thank you for all the small, silly little things you did for me as a kid, you know, like putting googly eyes on the fruit at the supermarket just to make me laugh.
Isn't that what, yeah. Hit us a little bit harder in the feels and remind us of everything everywhere all at once. Yeah, I'm not taking points away because, oh, everything everywhere all at once also did that? No. Coincidentally or intentionally, it makes the scene stronger.
And f*** you. We're not working on yourself. We're seeking help after we lost Dad.
The whole episode, he tries to be the same old Ted, but it finally boils over and he addresses the problem. And it's super rough, but so well done. And yet, despite things getting real for a while, many folks still feel like the show is too feel good. And I'm sorry, but who called the fun police? Because while everyone complains about the syrupy, sappy feel-goodness of Ted Lasso, The Bear is the new favorite, somewhat gritty show that everyone loves. And believe me, I also love it. I love it so much. It's so well done. However, first...
The following contains extremely minor spoilers for the incredible FX show The Bear, which I'll take because my family all loves it, but I need to feel good.
Okay, now that that's out of the way, get ready to have your brain explode out your butt. Here we go. However, Ted Lasso and The Bear are the same show. Kind of expected more butt explosions. Such is life. Here's what I mean. First off, they're not the same. I know I just said they were, but I want to make it clear. I know they are very different. Secondly, I want to make it clear that I'm not saying this is a bad thing. There's nothing new under the sun. What I mean is we get the same return from both shows. The same emotional high. They both give you the heartwarming feeling of it might all be okay, even if it isn't. Because the overarching goal and message of The Bear and Ted Lasso is the same. They just do it in polar opposite ways. A yin to the other's yang. They both have ensemble casts surrounding a flawed but immensely likable main character who's entering a new phase of their career where they seem out of their element and no one seems to like that at first. Also, they both cook. The end. But Ted Lasso is an overtly positive show whose emotional gut punches are based around rough things that happen, with few exceptions. And The Bear is an overtly anxious show where everything is falling apart, whose emotional gut punches are based around something really wonderful happening, again, with few exceptions. The awful stuff in The Bear...
Okay, I don't feel like watching The Bear at all.
...is awful, but you expect it to be awful.
I don't need to artificially inject more anxiety into myself. I already know that doesn't end well for computer screens.
I mean, I'm not sure anyone was prepared for the Fishes episode, but it's not surprising. And while beard-forgiving Nate is wonderful and made me cry, it wasn't particularly
just spoil the thing I worked so hard to not spoil. Come on.
In its predictable way, just that it's how the show moves. And if you're caught up on the newest season of The Bear and thinking, but it ends so sad. Sure, and season 2 of Ted Lasso ends with Nate betraying Ted by telling Trent about his panic attacks and going to West Ham. That's Empire, baby. They might have some layers that need to be peeled off, but in the end, it's the same message. These are both shows about good people trying to do good. Oh, another similarity to The Bear. Platonic male-female relationships that in most shows or movies would become romantic that are allowed to stay platonic while still being deeply important to the characters, a la Rebecca and Ted versus Carmi and Sid. While I'm at it, Ted and Rebecca have one of my favorite platonic loving relationships ever. There were moments I caught myself wishing they would get together. What's that? Like romance-pilled? I'm romance-pilled, I think. But I'm extremely glad I never got what I wanted because seeing a real true friendship like this is refreshing.
Going crazy. No more than anyone else. There we go.
Coors Banquet, the same brewing tradition since 1873. Start your legacy.
But shows like Succession, Breaking Bad, Barry, and at least early Rick and Morty are about bad people. Obviously, not everyone is bad, but overall, those shows are about bad people. And I love those shows. They're fantastic, but loving shows about crappy people doesn't mean you can't also love shows about great people. And complaining about the overt positivity of Ted Lasso is kind of like complaining about the violence in the John Wick movies or explosions in Michael Bay movies. Tom Cruise running. It's totally okay to not like it, but it's also a major feature of what you're watching, so you kind of need to meet it where it's at, or maybe don't watch it. And like with those examples, I think when you embrace those aspects, your enjoyment increases exponentially. Ted Lasso's positivity pays off, and by that I mean the writers knew what they were doing. Ted's golden retriever-esque dopiness becomes grating when it's supposed to. It was clear in season 1 that Ted uses positivity to cover up his emotions. And while this may not lead to his panic attacks, it sure as crap doesn't help them. The show is also filled to the brim with little moments and subtleties that prove it can use that unbridled positivity for set it up, knock it down joke structure. Roy quietly sings along to Let It Go at karaoke because of course he does. He's always hanging out with his niece Phoebe. There's no way he hasn't seen Frozen a million times. The character development is...
I just want to call out, I love every scene with him and Phoebe where she is tiny and wears bright pink and happy things, and he's huge and he's covered in black stuff, and they still absolutely love each other.
Subtle and organic. Wait, Roy is Richie, an angry naysayer who thinks it's all bullcrap and then becomes a true believer while going through a huge and painful transition in his life that he'll ultimately find fulfillment in that he never imagined possible. Same show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, another one of my favorites is Rebecca. Yes, we know she apologizes to Ted at the end.
Really that confused yeah won me over more for Bear than literally anything else has. It's like how the main thing that ever makes me want to watch Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I've seen the first season. I'll probably watch the second season at some point. I watched the one-off episode where they meet with they cross over with Lower Decks. Lower Decks is top tier post-aughts Star Trek. The main thing is just like that CBS commercial where you just see you just see. I keep wanting to say Picard. I know it's not Picard, not Archer. Archer's before him. Pike. You see him staring at the freaking the freaking what's his face? His face on the wall. He's like both like tired and exasperated, but also amused and in wonder by it. And that face that he just does like throughout the show. That's the thing that inevitably will make me come back to Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Is his ability to be both tired and exasperated and absolutely loving his lifestyle at the same time.
End of the first season, and poof, is that scene well done. But she seems to never let go of wanting to watch Rupert suffer. She wants to see him in pain. But Rupert's last scene sees the entire stadium of his childhood club chanting wanker at him. And yes, he sucks. But Rebecca doesn't take part and even looks a little sad because she's moved past wanting to see him suffer.
And you know what? Every time I watch that scene, like the first time I loved it. I think the first time we all loved it, and it's good that we loved it. Every time since I watch that scene, whether I'm rewatching the episode myself, or it's reactors, or someone else, or just like clips, it hurts harder. But then it's a weird hurt, because at one point it's not, at no point do I feel like, oh, I forgive him. Even in the way I'm like letting go of my hatred forgiveness, which is a whole different thing between forgiving and apologizing. Not forgiving and accepting an apology or whatever. Forgiving for yourself versus letting them off the hook. It's a limitation of the English language. Because I don't. It's great that she did. I don't. Maybe I did, but I'm not using that word. Which means I haven't let him off the hook, which means I haven't. But it hurts a little bit more. I don't think he suddenly became a good person or anything's justified because he hurts now. It's just he becomes a beautiful in that moment beautiful. In just that moment. I assume he went right back to his home and did something physically ugly. But in that moment he's that perfect kind of portrait of a tragic villain.
It's not just Rebecca is a good person now, it's the end of one of her arcs. She started the show wanting to cause...
He is a villain. He's a horrible person. He's repulsive to his soul. But it doesn't mean that moment isn't profoundly tragic. There we go.
That's pain and ends it taking no joy in watching him have probably one of the worst moments in his life. Also, as an aside, one of my favorite episodes and storylines was her time in Amsterdam with the quiet burly man and then full-on rom-com running into him later in the finale. Yes, please. Hey, Marcus goes to Copenhagen to make a tasty dessert. Rebecca goes to the Netherlands and meets a tasty dessert. Ted Lasso uses the titular character's over-the-top optimism to lay the groundwork that makes the series' multiple gut punches work so well. Despite being full of hilarious one-liners and genuinely laugh-out-loud moments.
And when it comes to locker rooms, I like them just like my mother's bathing suits. I only want to see them in one piece, you hear?
The emotional rough patches are far and away the best moments of the show and what it will be remembered for. A few examples: Ted's first panic attack at karaoke, Roy, Jerry McGuiring Ted to join the coaching staff, Rebecca coming clean to Ted, Nate going off on Ted, Ted revealing that his father died by suicide, Beard forgiving Nate, Ted just always being there for Rebecca at the charity events, at darts, just always. The entire final episode. One of my favorites is the insane emotional whiplash when Jamie's dad is
Beard's about to win.
berating him before shoving him. We're angry and feeling sad for Jamie, then surprised and a little thrilled when Jamie punches him, but then the reality of the situation settles in and we realize how devastating it would be for Jamie. But not before the man himself, probably the guy on the bottom of the list of people you'd expect to do what he's about to do, hugs Jamie and gives Jamie and all of us a huge emotional release. Tears, ball to tears. Still.
And the whole unspoken thing between Jamie and Roy, because, you know, we learn later, all cats out of the bag. I thought maybe he'd be spoiler alert, but of course he's not. That's not how his show works. Knowing that that growing up he admired Roy, and then he was a pratfall when he actually got to meet Roy, because let's face it, old Roy probably wasn't living up to young, hotshot Jamie's expectations. But then them growing close together, and suddenly the childhood hero being the guy who's there for you. That's just beautiful. Incidentally, for anyone who's on the whole who should you choose thing between Jamie and Roy or just neither, I'm both. Yeah, but those two need to choose each other first. Those two choose each other, and then she just gets both of them if she wants them. They have each other either way.
But there is one line to me that exemplifies the whole series. In fact, I think about it quite a bit. At the end of season 1, when Richmond has just been relegated, Ted says,
And I want you to be grateful that you're going through this sad moment with all these other folks. Because I promise you, there is something worse out there than being sad. And that is being alone and being sad. Ain't nobody in this room alone.
It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change the fact that they lost and they're sad. It's simply a way of seeing the world differently, a way that acknowledges there are always going to be times that are total crap, but we can't do it alone. Humans aren't supposed to do it alone. It's why Walter White and Barry are the bad guys. Despite their rhetoric, they're selfish, crappy dudes. They always say it's for their family or to keep everyone safe, but they're lying and it catches up to them. Walter even admits it. On the other hand, Ted leaves Richmond because he wants to put his relationship with his kid first. The comparison is interesting to me as well because we all wanted to see Walter go full anti-hero villain and become Heisenberg, and we get exactly that. Our wishes are fulfilled. It's what the show is about, so it makes sense. You would think Ted Lasso is about Ted's coaching career, or maybe simply football, even just moving to England. So in some ways, we don't get the ending you'd think we want. We may hate his decision to go home, and we can come up with all sorts of ways he could have made it work, Rebecca certainly tries, or come up with arguments about why he made the wrong choice, but you can't argue with his motivations. And I have to guess that a large number of people understood that and were happy about his decision because they recognized what the show is really about. And I have to guess those that think the show was too feel-good were totally confused and depressed for weeks after the finale.
That's the biggest Meg I've ever seen.
Biggest Meg anyone's ever seen.
Meg 2, The Trench, rated PG-13, now playing only in theaters.
Cashback 5% on travel with no annual fee. Chase Freedom Unlimited. How do you cash back?
We love a flawed...
Incidentally, if you ask who would win, Bruce from Jaws or any of the Megs, the answer is Bruce from Jaws because they don't stay dead. So yeah, absolutely, Meg would win the first 200 bouts, but by the 201st bout, when Bruce is still back and has kids, and kids upon kids, maybe does like a time BS thing, and just mobs him, eventually Bruce is going to win, because that's what Bruce does. Bruce killed Jaws.
wounded character, but too many of us idolize the wrong ones. And loving a character and emulating a character are very different. The irony of people thinking Pickle Rick is a total badass would be funny if it wasn't also kind of sad. The whole point of that episode is that Rick will literally turn himself into a pickle and then kill a dumpster ton of dudes, all to avoid going to therapy. It's one long dudes will X instead of going to therapy. Does that mean we can't like the Pickle Rick episode? Heck no, it's awesome. Not to mention that Ted also avoids therapy. And honestly has a decent reason to, especially considering his wife ends up dating the couple's therapist that Ted always felt had been pushing them apart, which is next level messed up. But he still sees
which again, I get that that's not the ending that they would want, because that's not the emotional head they're going to, but I really need to believe that guy goes to jail. Not because, ooh, he's the bad guy in the relationship and Ted should get to what he wants and the bad guy who took the relationship. No. He should go to jail because he was her therapist who urged her to then do couples therapy with him, and then she divorced Ted, regardless of whether or not he actually did manipulate. That doesn't matter. That's beyond unethical. And then he marries her like immediately afterwards. Beyond unethical. Like, the lightest punishment should be him never practicing therapy again. And the more realistic thing should be going to jail for like 5 years and getting out on good behavior because he's white and affluent.
Dr. Sharon, he still tries to better himself and those around him, and he still, in the end, does what he believes is genuinely best for his son, even if it means giving up.
And we'll know to wear glasses at court.
His life at Richmond. I guess my point is Ted Lasso is what happens when the flawed, wounded character owns up to their own mistakes and weakness and commits themselves to personal growth. I love that it also shows that while it's great to spread sunshine on everyone around you, if you don't deal with your own issues, everything is going to fall apart. I can understand why on the surface people might not like the show. It's corny, it's so corny. Some of the needle drops feel like a bad sinus medicine commercial, but to be fair, others make me sob. Some things get wrapped up too quick, others not at all, but I gotta say, all of it feels intentional. Ted always seems to have the right thing to say, some anecdote or story from his past that is helpful in the moment. Like, literally always. Even when hustling a sucker billionaire at darts. And right when it almost feels like it's over the top, he compares being gay to being a Broncos fan and everyone calls him on it. He's not perfect, he's just trying his best, which is all any of us can do.
What if with Denver Broncos?
Well, no, that's a very good question, too. Yeah, it's an American football reference, an absolute fumble in this situation. I apologize.
Sometimes we give advice to a friend when all they wanted was someone to listen. Doesn't mean we're jerks, we just got it wrong. Sometimes we throw a surprise party for our bestie when they actually hate surprises. And humans. Go figure. And then sometimes you're watching The Matrix Revolutions and your wife points out how a character's revealing dress seems to be the focus of a scene, and we realize that the character's outfit is red, the color that represents distraction in the film series. So we try to point out that it's distracting and purposefully so, but then everyone thinks we're being creepy because instead of just stating it, we attempt to make a joke because that's what we do, and it just goes terribly. Sometimes that happens. So does that mean I'm not YouTube Jesus? I guess it does. And if that puts me next to not sports Jesus, Ted Lasso, I think I'm doing all right. And today what I wanted to do was give all of my Nebula viewers a special surprise that I've been...
Which I don't care about.